Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Evolution Podcast. Today, we're back in studio, but today, not just only are we back in studio, today we have a special guest. We have a guest who's going to be coming on here. We're going to be talking a lot about sales. Now, a lot of people, the reason why I'm bringing him on is a lot of people, when you start a business, right, you have this idea, you have this huge idea in your head that you basically have to translate, right? You have to basically get people to buy your product, right? You have to get people to basically subscribe to your channel. You have to get people to basically do business with you, but a lot of people struggle on the sales side. That's why I brought with me today a sales expert who's going to be talking about that. We're also going to be covering a few things on the media side. So, Dan, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Oh, hey, thanks for having me, Emmanuel. I've been in sales marketing for probably about 40 years. I've owned businesses up until now, which I still have a business called BVS Film Productions and Premier Podcast Productions. I'm a best-selling author. I've worked with some of the largest companies in the world, actually developing videos and marketing for them. And I've also partnered with sales legend Tom Hopkins to write a best-selling book called Fill Your Funnel, and that was about 5 years ago. So I've got a little experience in the sales world, and then hopefully I can enlighten some people with some ideas.
Interesting. So, on the fill your funnels, what because everyone knows Tom Hopkins in the game. It's not a small name there. Um, But what makes the program completely different from something else that's out there?
Well, the book itself is it basically takes his techniques. I'll give you a little background on that. Probably 7 years ago. Let's go even farther back. I was a student of Tom Hopkins for many years. Through his tapes and books and everything, and I used all his techniques throughout the years to build my business. And back then it was manual. We would go out and we would talk to people, and we would, slide the contract across. We'd never say contract, slide the agreement across the table and have it approved. So I found out as time was going on, and we were doing this online, and we didn't have to talk to people in person, and there were Zoom meetings, and next thing you know, I was closing deals through emails and never talking to anybody. So I went to Tom Hopkins and I asked him, I said, hey, how about if we write a book together? And I did this through LinkedIn, similar to how we met, actually. And through the process of dealing with all his people, he agreed. And it was about a 9 or 10 month process, and it came out and became a bestseller. So I basically took his techniques, and it talks about how to use them in an online environment. And so that's really what the book is based on.
If you could break it down into three core things that you would say, like let's say someone has a traditional funnel, because I'll give you a little insight as to what we do. So we just recently launched an AI product, which I personally think is going to revolutionize the sales game in the sense as to prospecting per se, right? So let's say you spend, I don't know, the average salesperson probably spends maybe, 10, 11 hours to book 3 to 4 appointments if they're cold calling, for instance. We developed an AI software that does the exact same thing for you, right? So let's look at it from that perspective, and we're launching a funnel, right? So I'm thinking about it in, let's say, an hour. What are three things that we can get from Fill Your Funnel that we can apply that can, on the back end translate to obviously providing more value to our users and customers, but also make the company not go bankrupt?
Right. Well, step one, AI is unbelievable. I mean, it literally just turned this entire world upside down in the past year. I mean, 5 months, Chat GPT, everything that relates to, all the different things out there. And I think just now people are just getting the handle of that and learning it. So step one would be integrating that, comfortably into the sales process. I think that would be step one in prospecting and everything else that's out there. But I think also you need that personal touch still, even though after you get the leads, you have to pre-qualify. So I think that would be kind of step two. A lot of that can be done through things like videos that go out to people. In our business, for example, when I send a video out about our company, it kind of answers all the objections that are already in a client's mind, so that it pre-qualifies already. But that would be step two, and step three is really closing and knowing how to close and doing it professionally. And that it's almost a lost art with people nowadays. They kind of think they can get it right to the goal line and people are just going to order from them. But in reality, you have to answer the objections, and there has to be a level of trust in that third process of the sales game. So I would say those are your three things that you need to look at.
Got you. When it comes to objection, so what are the key ones that you get, especially in the online world?
Oh gosh, it's it's kind of funny because we don't get as many as we used to due to the a lot of the videos that we put out for that. But I'd say some of them are they're kind of like silent. I think in the online world you get kind of like this cyber cold shoulder, and you
Mm,
and you can't really see what those objections are. Sometimes it's budget. I think the way to get past that budget thing is give a range to somebody when you're talking to them. Kind of open the subject right up right away, and that can make that kind of thing go away. So, but I would say that's one. Sometimes you get competition from other people too. Other groups that could be the objection. What do you have better that's better than the other guy down the street?
got
So
you. So do you get run into any of the, because I think with the internet, with the advent of the internet now, I think trust is a big one, right?
huge. Yeah.
Because one of another big reason why I'm a big proponent that if you run a business, any
Mhm.
business, I think you should have an online presence. I'll give you an example. So my personal trainer, because I do some boxing 2 to 3 days, usually around twice a week,
Cool.
and he's also a nutritional coach. Now, as a
Mhm.
nutritional coach, one of the few things that he needed was, obviously we all need clients, right? So we kind of tailored a plan, and I was like, hey, you should do this, and it's like, you know what, actually, he actually followed it step by step. And what was very, very interesting about it was it translated in a matter of 3, 4 days. He's like making more money in that time that he makes in his personal training session, right?
Yeah.
But another thing which was interesting, I was like, hey, I think you need to start a podcast. He goes, well, I don't think I really want to do a podcast. I was like, well, let's think about it from two folds. If you start a podcast, what's going to be your niche? He's like, maybe personal trainers, because I'm a personal trainer, so I understand the world. So I'm like, all right, good. You're going to have personal trainers. Now, if you have the personal trainers and they see you as, that guy that's, they've been watching for 2, 3 years, has been putting out content, and they've seen you grow. If you put out a product and say, hey, you know what? I want to sell, this and this is going in the market right now, and it's limited time. I mean, I'm like, what are the odds in which you can monetize that to a 6-figure deal in a month? He goes, that's more than likely. I'm like, look at you're familiar with Dwayne Johnson, right? Dwayne Johnson comes out with a tequila brand and it's worth almost half a billion or a billion, just like that. He
Yeah.
was an overnight success, but he's been building his career up for the past 20 something years,
Right.
right? So,
Mhm.
what can you speak more a little bit about the personal brand and how it actually helps in the online world?
Oh yeah, that's huge. And it really boils down to the your first profile out there. Any profile you have, you look at LinkedIn. I mean, that's probably the main place people go to look at, for a business standpoint, who you are and what you do. And it surprised me how many people neglect that, and they have a picture up there of them frowning or in a t-shirt drinking a beer or whatever. And I mean, I understand, but at the same time, that's your first impression. It's what you have to go by. And that relates to going to get a job somewhere. The first place an employer goes to look at what you do is on Facebook or some of the social media. So it's got to be spotless. And most people don't realize that that's really where they go, you know?
That's interesting though. So is it in a sense as to, is it a lack of, on your end, would you say it's a lack of education, or would you say it's a position where it's a disinterest per se?
I'd say it's a lack of education or the importance of it behind it. One thing you can do fairly easily is, have your friend go look at your social environment, and they'll give you an honest opinion, or, a colleague at work say, hey, can you take a look at my social footprint and let me know what you think? And they'll tell you exactly what, if they're a good friend, they'll tell you exactly what they think of it. And it's kind of a good starting point. Or look at some people out there that you would emulate or want to be, see what their profiles are like. I can pretty much guess they're pretty spot on if they're, any type of an executive or successful.
It's interesting you say that, which I do agree with that. But what's interesting is they say the first step to change is self-awareness, right?
Yeah, right.
Now, because what's interesting about that is most people, this is from my perspective, what I'm thinking here is most people don't see a problem with what they already have. They don't see the profile of just, the cats. I mean, nothing wrong with cats and dogs, but it's like in a
Yeah,
sense as to, but then again, it's also, arguably, there's also the sense as to a lot of people are not even interested. Like the amount of people who are interested in entrepreneurship world, it's slimmer than the people who are interested in the safety net of actually having a job, right?
right, right. Yeah,
So
yeah, it's tricky.
but then again, which also makes you think about it, right? Because if you like you and I, for instance, right, you've been in sales for 40 plus years. I've been even close to that. I'm like, that's older than that's longer than I've been. That's longer than I've been on this planet, right? So that's
Sure.
basically speaking to the experience there. But you've had to. I like to equate sales with an element of it's like a sport, but it's a fun game
It can be, yes, if you do it right, it can be, and
if you do it right.
right. We like Tom and I like to equate it to the promised land, and that's what the book, one of the last chapters in the book, talk about. It's like once you're in the promised land, it's not a sales process anymore with a big customer. It is you're on their team and you're dealing unless more like objections like, can we fit it in our budget? When can we have it? Versus are we going to use you or not anymore?
Mm,
And it becomes order taking, and that's a great place to be in the sales world, because you're a trusted vendor. And big companies like that, especially once you get in with a big company, it's hard to get not be getting jobs all the time, because you become a preferred vendor and they can't go anywhere else, they have to use you. So
yeah.
those are some cool places to be once you really learn sales.
So what would you say is a criteria of saying that you are in that promised land? Like let's say I'm selling a deal right now as an enterprise sale. How would I know? Because panicking, gonna make this account? Am I not gonna make this account? What necessarily makes it that like that deal of like, hey, boom, we're in the promised land?
Yep. Okay. So the process behind that is you have hoops you jump through, and they'll start you with something very small. Like we just did one of these, and they started us with like a little tiny project. It took about 5 months to build the trust level. And, the person, she's a marketing manager for a big corporation. And that trust level, there were little hoops, call me next week, call me any one of those steps that you miss brings you back down a notch or two. You'll get a couple, but then there's the hoops that are like, we'll try you in a small project. And then once they try you in the next project, next thing you know, they'll say, okay, I'm going to introduce you to accounting. And once you're introduced to accounting and you get like a blanket PO, that's pretty much the promised land at that point. And then it's yours to lose at that point.
Got you. Then again, what I'm thinking is there's got to be a degree of patience,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. It's a big account, that you're dealing with, could take a year. It could take a year.
But now, then again, okay. So, which is also interesting because this is
In the
how I'm
corporate
looking at it.
world. In the
Huh?
corporate world,
In the corporate world.
Yeah,
Yeah, and what's interesting about that, because in the we do B2B and B2C side of things, and
sure.
the B2B side of things almost, you do make, you know if you actually average it out, you do make a little bit more. It's a more of a higher ticket item. You could be doing 40, 50, 60 grand deals.
Right.
On the B2C, you might be doing 500, 700, $800 deals. But if you do enough of it, it almost balances it out,
Yeah.
balances out the weight. But then again, how do you deal with that dead time?
Well, it's numbers. You do a numbers game, and when I started my first business, I made sure I was doing 100 calls a day every day, and I became an addict about that. Back then, it was
Mm,
a phone. It was 100-pound phone. Your first one's 100 pounds, next one's 99, and next thing you know, you're just making phone calls with a headset on. But that once you build those numbers up, you know, I always found that you may lose a deal over here, but something over here happens, and that makes the world a difference.
Interesting. Huh. Okay. Now, I know I'm playing devil's advocate here, right?
Sure. Hmm.
I think sales is the most rewarding profession to be in. I personally would be. Yeah, I mean, it's an uncapped income potential, right? You can make as much money as you can work, right? But let's say I'm watching this right now, either an individual who's in a position where they're like, hey, I need to make more money. I mean, interest rates are crazy. I mean, the average grocery bill now, average grocery cart, you could fill up your cart, average was around $80, but now it's like 200 and something dollars based off of factoring, how much everything,
Oh yeah.
how
Mhm.
expensive it's getting. And they're like, all right, I'm looking at sales, right? All right, boom, I'm gonna do it. But then they remember, when they were 5 years old and they tried to sell a lemonade, in a lemonade stand and nobody would buy anything. Or they would remember when a guy tried to talk to that girl that he really liked, and then she told him, F off. Or,
Yeah, right.
situations like that. And people start to build off this fear of rejection,
Hmm.
right?
There are many fears. Rejection's one of them. Believe it or not, fear of success is just as real.
Mm.
Fear of what happens if I do become successful. And there's it ultimately boils down to fear of fear, fear of
So
the unknown.
let me ask you this question then, which is the back to the fear of success, which is very interesting. You mentioned this. So, which I wanted to just, if obviously we have a little bit of time, but I just want to
Yeah.
share the story because I really want your opinion on the fear of success. So I started out initially, I was selling insurance, all right, door to
Mhm.
door, which is a very, I think it's a very character building,
Absolutely.
character building job to do.
Yep.
And I remember my first one of my first ever sales was, I still remember this like it was yesterday. It was a Saturday evening at 7 p.m. I was calling the list, and I got a hold of this guy. Till today, he's an awesome dude, and he's still on the books, still a client of mine, still on the books. And it was 7 p.m. I called him. I was still very new in the industry. I didn't even know what I was doing, and I
Yeah.
just read the script, and he actually agreed. I was like, why would first off, I was like, this script doesn't make any sense, but I was like, okay. And he's like, yeah, come by my house tomorrow. I'm like, I have an 11 a.m. He goes, no, he goes, if you're not here before 10 a.m., then don't even think about it. I was
Yeah.
like, fine, I'll be there by 8. It was a 30-minute drive. I drove down there, went in his house. It was a Saturday. It was a Sunday. I think it was Saturday. And I think it was Saturday because I called him Friday. And knocked on the door and he answered. He's like, we're praying right now, so we can come wait inside. And then once we finish praying, and then we'll come down. So came down and we had a conversation. But the goal, which was the weirdest thing, my goal that day was to get him not to buy, which is interesting. I know
Mm,
the goal was to get him not to buy. So I said everything you can to blow the deal, right? Which
yeah.
is what was very fascinating. So I remember towards the end of it, I said, I'm not going to say his name for confidentiality purposes, but I said, let's say his name was, John. I was like, John, how can you justify paying $300 a month for this policy, knowing that you're probably not going to use it? You might need it, but you're probably not going to use it. And he goes, and then he just bam, 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 and he listed off reasons why he wanted it.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, sir, sign right here. And it was about a $4,000 commission that was paid off of that. And I was like, but then again, what happened was, and I never even thought about it. I never even cared about the money, but I was on a sales streak after, because after you make a sale, the best time to make a
You can
sale is
always
after you
say
just made a
a
sale.
high. It's a high. Yeah.
You get a high. So I was on a streak.
Yeah.
And then I caught the attention of the higher ups, and then they started inviting me to speak on stuff like, hey, you're a new agent, you're making this much. But guess what happened to my numbers after that? Bam, it
Back to
dropped.
the, yep. The other shoe drop.
Everything dropped. Everything
Yeah.
dropped because then there was the CEO of the company was like,
Mhm.
hey, and then there was a part, and then there was that fear that I was like, what if the goal was not initially? I started selling insurance just as a joke because I was like, what's the one thing people don't want to buy? I was like, hey, let
Yeah.
me sell it. But then I realized it was getting, I was actually becoming successful. And then that was where I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. There was a book. I wish I can say there's a book called Go for No. I can't remember what the author is, but author the name of the book. But it's about a guy who, later in life he's shown and he's shown a story of how he could have been more successful if only he went for the rejection. Because when you go for no, there's always a yes in between, right?
Right.
You talk to a
Yeah.
thousand people, they're not all going to say no. Someone's going to say yes.
Right. Correct.
But that was the goal. My goal was just to get as much rejection as possible. But then people started buying.
Well, you know what? You made a valid point, though. Everybody has a comfort zone.
Hmm.
So, if you go beyond your comfort zone, I got to get back to my comfort zone. You go below your comfort zone, I got to stay at that comfort zone. Anything beyond that is going to it makes people uncomfortable. So, that's one thing I would suggest, getting outside that comfort zone, even if it's just small steps, doing different things, eventually you'll change your comfort zone to something different.
Mm.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting. So, but how? But so the fear of success per se is, let's say someone is pretty much comfortable with what you're making, right? And they're like, that's fine with me.
Yep.
And they don't see any reason to, because then again, to make more means you have to take the risk.
Can be, yes. Yeah.
All right. And as human beings, I mean, most people are very, very risk averse.
Yeah. I always look at it at this stage, it's more like becoming happy and enjoying your life and helping others, Tom mentions another thing. He says, the more people you can help in their lives, the more you'll be successful in your life. And that was also Zig Ziglar and his son, Tom, talk about that as well. The more people you can help, the more successful you'll become, whether you like it or not. It's what's going to happen.
That's true, but now I want to ask you another question: is if someone is getting into sales and they have no money, this desperation, is it more of it's more of now rather than it say if I want to help someone versus I just got to pay my bills.
Yeah. So, I mean, with social media and all the things you can do right now in that, do the numbers till it hurts. Is what I would say. Do it till it hurts and then do it more. Because no matter how new you are in sales, no matter how bad you are at what you're doing, you will trip over sales if you do the numbers. You just do. Look at the best baseball player out there. He's only just a little different than the guy right next to him. His averages are just a little bit better, yet he makes 100 times more than the guy sitting on the bench. And it's so true in sales as well. And now you can just go on social media and just get into LinkedIn and go through groups, and you can just totally hit people, up all the time and talk to them and just, find out about them and build those averages. That would be the easiest or quickest way to do it.
Interesting. No, it's we actually did the math. This was when we initially first started. This was a while back. I had started a different parallel company.
Right.
For every 1,000 emails we sent out was because we had was around $3,400. So
Yeah.
it was like the more you send out, the more you make.
It is the law. It is the law of sales out there, and it doesn't change no matter what you do. You can't change it.
That's true. Now,
At
now
least
I want
I
to talk.
found that out.
No, I don't think you can. It's a law of averages. It's like, it's
Mm,
like, even I had a dating coaching service that I offered very,
mm.
very long time ago. And I used to tell the guys, I'm like, if you spoke to enough girls, you have a girlfriend by the end of the week.
Yeah. Yeah.
It,
Some
it,
relationship, it works that way too.
it works. It works. So now, you came up with a movie, Master of Sales.
Yes.
Can you
Yeah.
talk to us a little bit more about that movie?
Yeah. So after we wrote the book together, Tom and myself, he was going to retire. He was going towards retirement, and I said, there's more to this relationship. I happen to have a video production company, and I asked him. I said, I'd like to go partners with you and tell your life story. So he reluctantly, he's a very shy guy, and he's like, really had to think about it. We had to get his wife and his assistant to talk him into it, but he agreed to do it. So we went out to Scottsdale and worked with him and got interviews from him. He kind of narrates the whole thing. And then we also got introduced to some really big players out there that, said amazing things about him and gave their entire careers to him, attributed it to his sales techniques, which just shocked me. People that were in the $100-200 million value range, all of them were like, he's the guy. He's the guy. So I learned that I had got another whole nother respect for the man. And as I got to know him, it was really cool. And he's the same guy on stage as he is off the stage. There's no arrogance about him, nothing. So anyway, that's the documentary. It's out, and it's Master of Sales. What is it? Tom Hopkins doc.com is where it's at online right now.
Okay, so if you guys want to find it, we'll also put in the link in the description. You can go to
Yeah.
Tom Hopkins doc. Now, this is just a bonus question. This is an interesting question because I know you
Mhm.
kind of a songwriter. You write jingles, and
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
uh,
I've been a musician for as long as I've been in sales, longer actually.
longer.
Yeah, oh
Did
yeah.
you ever think about going like on tours and like
Oh, when I was younger, I had blue hair and it was down to my yeah, I had all kind of yeah, I was, you know, when I was maybe 10 years younger. How old are you by any chance? You don't have to say.
I'm just about turning 30.
Oh yeah, when I was your age, I was on not on tour, but local tour, and want to be a rock star and all that fun stuff. So
Well, yeah, I mean, do you regret not going that route?
no, because I'd be dead right now. Like
You would be
the
dead.
80s and 90s, It's all
Oh
about
yeah,
drugs and partying and
that is true. So you chose a better path to live in a longer, much fulfilling life.
that's
Now,
true.
I want to ask you this about a longer fulfilling life as far as family goes, right?
Mhm.
How do you balance the long hours required in sales and entrepreneurship and a family?
Well, I think that's kind of a hard question. With me, I've always owned my own business, so I've made the time no matter what. Um, I think I only worked in sales for somebody else for maybe 2 years. And then after that, I started my own business and yeah, or I was a partner with one and then I just took it over. So, that's one way I was able to do that. But if you're in sales, yeah, you got to do the numbers. The nice thing is a lot of things can be done at home now. You have your laptop, you have AI, you've got automation. There's a lot of things that can speed up that process of the numbers that you need to do to become successful. And with a good technique, you'll increase your closing rate. You're saying the right things at the right time. Invest in yourself, and that'll give you the time you can spend with your family.
Someone said something to me, which you made some very, very valid points as far as there's various ways in which you can work from home, but someone said something. He goes, invest in yourself and invest in people, right? And
Mhm.
it took me a while to realize that because every business I started, I tried to do it by myself. I was always like, no, I don't need to do this. I'm gonna watch, this video. I'm gonna learn this or do that.
Mhm.
But then you get so stretched so thin that you're like, there's only so many hours in the day,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
and it's so hard to scale when you want to take the reins for everything, but that's the only way you can scale and grow is to be able to trust people, train them, and delegate, properly, and not easy to do. I believe me, I can totally relate to that.
So what's the most important skill you would say someone needs from, you know, for building, because most because here's the thing is most people online who say the entrepreneurs aren't really entrepreneurs. Most of them are
Yeah,
just, it's all a facade.
right.
But what is the most important skill you'd say, sister to sales, that you'd say would be important to building, especially if you have a team?
I'm sorry, what was the beginning of
So
that
let's
part?
say building a business, right?
Yeah.
Next to sales, right? Next
Mhm.
to sales. What other skill
Mhm.
set would you say would you add on the top of the list? You'd say, hey, you know what? I would put marketing, I'd put branding, I'd put sales as like, all in the same. I would even say marketing is probably higher. Marketing, branding. Branding would be more of a higher tier. And
Yeah.
then I'd have marketing, and then I would have sales. Because if there's a reason why Nike is just like every other shoe, but you put the check mark there and you can sell it for $1,000, and then you have the same shoe without the market, you sell it for $50, right?
Yeah.
So the branding take you there, and then you put marketing, ability to get attention. Because if you don't
Yeah.
can't get attention, you can't sell.
Yeah.
But what are the skill set would you say as a developing or a growing business owner would be something
Yeah.
that's necessary to have?
Yeah, people skills. You need to have good people skills, good negotiating skills. There's some pretty easy things you can do to do that. Um, those are probably the two the biggest ones. Likable, be likable.
Hmm.
If you're likable, people will bend over backwards for you no matter how much you screw up. Be honest with you. Seriously, I mean, you have to be approachable, and not arrogant. I would say have humility and confidence would be,
Mm,
and there's a fine line with those things. But if you can do that, that makes life a little easier in the business world, especially if you don't know what you're doing. And I've done that many times. I've jumped into things not knowing what I'm doing. The one other thing is find people that have done it already and
mm.
get to know them, and work with them, because if you can, because they can shorten that process considerably.
Interesting. Find people. Interesting. No, that's been definitely interesting. So in the sense as to in your time in what made you get into the media side of things as far as like, doing what you do right now?
Yeah, well, originally I had an agency for about 20 years, and we were doing really good. And then 2009 hit, and we all had to reinvent ourselves back then. That was a kicker for a lot of businesses. A lot of people went out of business, and it was difficult because it was almost the collapse of our economy at that point. Um, and a lot of people don't realize that, but 2009 was a really tough year, 2008 and 2009. So we reinvented ourselves at that point, and I became more our agency became more of an online approach. We use the same vendors, but we got rid of our brick and mortar, and it kind of grew it from there. And then turning into media, we saw this very interesting niche where back in the, I would say, maybe like 2010, 2011, and 12, even though 11 was bad, there was this niche where we could go in and, between like a freelance videographer and a full service video production team, and go into these big companies, and they really didn't have anybody in particular that could do videos. So it was a good niche for us to go in, talk to them, and say, hey, we could be your go-to guys for video production or whatever it might be. And we got a lot of good bites on that. It was a nice niche that was open, so we took it, and we grew the business from there. And then recently it became more of a podcast production. We do a lot of podcast production and marketing as well for the past 2 years now.
So the marketing is more for podcast, or is it more for just the business?
I think we're going to be steering towards podcasting, but it's going to be more towards like business podcasters. We think that's a pretty much untapped market. Businesses, B2B businesses getting into podcasting, not necessarily to grow a gigantic audience, but more for getting leads and
Hmm.
and bringing customers onto their shows, and building that network.
I
So
think that's I think that's very important with the building leads and the building. But let's say, I'm listening to this now and I'm a business, but I'm like, I don't have the time to devote to a podcast.
right.
What would you say to that?
Um, I would think in terms of like short term podcasts. I mean, like short form. Like we're starting to do 10-minute podcasts. Some of the
Hmm.
biggest real estate agents, like how, Robert Kiyosaki, for example, if you look at some of his podcasts, they're 10 minutes long. And he's got a whole series of those. And he's a billionaire, and he doesn't need to do it, but he wants to educate the people out there, and they do it in 10-minute increments. So you could do one hour session, kick out four of them, and you have a whole month's worth of podcasts in 1 hour,
Mm.
basically.
No, I think that'd be good content. One of the things we're doing, and this is a brief announcement because we've done some live in studio shows,
Mhm.
and one of the things I was thinking of doing was getting, because now we're gonna be doing more live webinars, right, for the
Mhm.
business, because I was talking to my staff today and they were like, hey, you are the face of the business. And I was like, yeah, but they're like,
Yeah.
we people want to see you more teaching about the stuff because you already, so we're getting an office here, and it's literally an office, but it's an office with a, how would I put it, it's like the design is going to be like an online classroom design.
Mhm.
All right, so it's like a classroom design, but I'm actually pretty stoked about it. I just no,
Oh,
I'm pretty
cool.
stoked about it because it's gonna
Yeah.
be thinking of hosting 2 to 4 hour trainings on there, so it would
Good
be from
idea.
like, Yeah, 2 to 4 hour trainings. We run them live, so it'll be like a live webinar, but we get people to join in every day from 2 to 4, and then at the end of it all, we'll close. There would always be, hey, if you want to, sign up, link
Right.
and all that. Because if you stay every day, then 2 to 4 hours, then by all means, then go to the link. And but I'm pretty much actually pretty stoked about that, because the podcast, we have actually gotten clients from our podcast, but
Yep.
um I'm thinking more, because I was actually having a conversation with someone else, like, that would be kind of crazy if you could do like a 2 to 4 hour live just every day, and you're like getting people kind of.
Yeah.
I'm just
It's
stoked about that.
hard to keep those going like that because stuff pops up, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
it's definitely hard to. That's why it's a dedicated. It's a
You got to
dedicated.
be dedicated, right?
Got to be dedicated. Yeah, got to be dedicated. Yeah, 2 to 4 hours. You got to be dedicated. But I'm like, you know what? That's a challenge I'm gonna give myself, to build the business to be as substantial as I want it to be.
Yeah.
If I have to do 2 to 4 hours a day, and but then again, it's like you like commit to the schedule, right? You're like,
Right.
every day. Yeah, you commit to the
Yeah.
schedule. Grant Cardone says, if you show me a man's schedule, I'll tell you how much money he makes, right?
Right. Right.
So, if you have like, hey, all this empty space, and you're like, what are you doing? So, no, it's about
Mm,
committing to a schedule. So I'm actually pretty stoked about that. We're gonna actually start doing that, but I am very, very stoked about that. But yeah, no, so
nice.
in the census to the podcast on the B2B side of things, so are you more necessarily getting them clients, or getting them, like, how would I put it, sponsorships?
Yeah, so our main thing recently has been kind of building the brand for podcasters. We'll do the production end of it, but also start developing a leadership, industry leader program. So something
Gotcha.
that's going to get out in front of people and develop
Gotcha.
strategies.
Gotcha. So how it would work is, let's say I am your local dentist, right? And I'm like, okay, hey, I'm a local dentist. I know nothing about the podcast. I get in touch with you. Then you pretty much will be like, hey, all right, this is the outlay. This is the strategy. What's the strategy? Can you walk us through the process?
Yeah, so it depends whether they have a podcast or not. If it's like a new podcast, we're going to want to have a strategy session and think about who their client base is and who they want and demographics, where they're located, and then think about things in terms of what would interest their customers. And then from there, we would set up the podcast on all the directories and start developing a program for them to do it. Some podcasts can be a monologue, where they talk for a little bit about, some helpful tips on dentistry or whatever it might be. And then maybe a customer could be on there. You want to put some thought behind it when developing it. So that'll be like step one, or maybe have some of their clients on, the podcast, saying how great they are, in one way or another, in a very subtle way. All those things could be really interesting. So that's how we would normally do it.
So it'd be more of like the review end of things, like the review side of things per se. More like you get the customer on, and then it's like, hey, my teeth used to be, I was missing all of them, and now I went to this dentist, and then now all of a sudden they're all back in, you know.
Yeah, my life's changed. He changed my entire life. That kind of thing. I'll think of the benefits behind what he's doing, in not necessarily teeth, but all the good things. The new girlfriend he got. All those crazy stuff that you can look at.
Which brings me to a question,
Yeah,
right? Because you know what they say, you sell the benefit, you sell the dream. Like, you don't sell the plane ride, the plane ticket. You sell you're gonna
destination,
be the destination.
the
You
experiences.
the experiences, right? You're
Right.
on a beach. Just imagine this: you're sitting on a beach. There's the sun. You're not doing anything. To your left, you have your girlfriend, your wife, or whoever it is, and then to the right, it's just sand, and you're just enjoying. And then but the road to get there is $4,000, right? But it's like it's a so. What's the importance in sales of storytelling?
Oh yeah, to some extent, I think it's important. I mean, you have to build in anything you're doing, you have to build the positive end of it, and really, the journey could be 10 easy payments, versus $4,000. It could be 10 small payments. You'll see that everywhere in sales. But ultimately, it's the destination and the experiences they would get if you're talking about a travel agency or something of that nature. For
Gotcha.
me, I'm more in the corporate thing, where so it's like, I need this done by Thursday. Can you guys do it? you know, there's not a lot of thought into what we're doing anymore, but that's the process, I would think.
So is it more of in the sense as to there's just not because on a not more of a corporate but more of a personal thing, it's on a personal thing they have to come out with the money out of pocket, right? But on a corporate thing, it's like, well, we just the company pays for it,
Yeah,
right? Is
it's yeah, right. That's exactly right, and that's one reason we're kind of like looking at that avenue for the podcast. Because there's in corporation, there's budgets, there's time frames, there's people that are dedicated for it, and it makes life a little easier. Instead of you're right, they reach in their pocket for $50. It's difficult to work with, to keep a business open if you're dealing with that all the time.
Yeah, no, that's definitely an interesting. It's so recently my girlfriend was explaining to me something called girl math. All right.
Hmm.
So yeah, so it's like so she would go to so for example, she would go to Target and she would let's say she bought a shirt and it was they said, "Oh, it's $100, but you buy for 60, you saving $40." Right? And
Mhm.
she's like and then she, spends so much. She's like, look at how much money I saved.
Oh,
Right. But I'm
oh,
like,
my wife does the same thing. So
yeah.
I do the
So,
same thing. I'll go to Mark's or some local store here and say, I got this for $5.
yeah,
You
it's
feel
like, look
better
at how
about
much money
yourself.
is. Yeah. Or something like, there's money in a Venmo and that
Yeah,
you forgot about it and you Venmo the money and then you're like, oh, look, it was free. So
it was
stuff like
free.
that. So kind of things like that is where I think on a B2C, there's a lot more you need to be more in touch with, I would say, the buyer psychology.
Right,
And
right.
B2B, you need to be more in touch with the problem and how much it affects your deadline. Because as the thing is, if they can't meet, like let's say you're selling to an airline and they need to, have something done in this specific time and they need it done by Q1, right? And you
Yeah.
say it's 40 grand if we can get it done for you by Q1, then you're the guy, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And the whole key behind that is you've got to show them that you've done it before. And
Mm,
you have somebody that can. I had the exact same thing happen, but I had a video of somebody that actually we did the project for similar for another company. I showed them the video and they sent us the PO. So those kind of things really help when you have the validity behind it to do stuff
what
like
if
that.
you've never done a deal like that before?
Yeah, well, then you got to earn it. You really got to earn it. You got to do the numbers because there will
Mm,
be one guy, and there's a prime example of that. I was doing the numbers one time for something, and I had a guy do that. Out of the blue, he saw 3 of my videos, and it was a big corporation, well known. Everybody knows who they are. And he says, "I need a video done." And your video resonated with me. It was a little 2-minute, little tiny video, save a little money, use us, and ended up being $20,000. It was like a matter of, I don't know, it all happened. I never talked to the guy. I never even met him. It was all done through emails. He sent me a PO, but I did have videos of, all along the way of people I work with. So
yeah.
that it does help. But yeah, numbers. It's all numbers. You gotta do the numbers, and there'll be that situation that occurs that everything lines up perfectly. You know.
No, I
So
love it. I love it. No, I know you. As we wrap up here, I know you do you have a little present, a little gift that you prepared for the audience, and
I do.
if you want
Yes.
to go ahead and share it.
Yeah. So my latest book is all about negotiating and some really great money saving tips with just some very simple techniques. And in this economy that we have right now, I think it's going to help a lot of people because most people don't realize with some simple negotiating techniques they could save tons of money, tons and tons of money. So anyway, the book's called The Secret Online Door, and I'm going to give it away for the next week to anybody that emails the link that we put out for this podcast. So I'll send it to you free of charge, and you guys can look at it, and hopefully you'll get a lot of great things from it, and love to get a review or two if we could as well from it, and pass to
Awesome,
as many people as you like.
awesome. So, guys, the link will be in the description. So, if you are watching this on YouTube, go ahead and click on the description now. You can go ahead and email and just go ahead and get that book. If you're on Spotify, the link is also going to be in the description. Now, definitely, guys, if you are on, please do us a favor. Like the video, hit the follow button, hit the subscribe button. Now, Dan, I'm going to leave it to you here. Any final words for the audience?
Oh, just go for it, guys. There's always going to be issues with the economy, with everything. It never changes. That change is inevitable. but your persistency and professionalism and doing the numbers will change things for you personally, no matter what. So try to keep everything out from the outside out and build from the inside. That's what I would say.
I love it. I love it. Absolutely love it, guys. And once again, guys, don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And Dan, it was an absolute pleasure having you on. And everyone, like I like to say, bye
My
bye.